Massey, welcome to the podcast, Two Women Who Make It Happen, Journeys to Success. I want to start by saying thank you for actually joining and participating in this podcast as well, Carla. It means a lot. And as mentioned, it kind of highlights to everyone out there, senior female leaders and sort of your journeys, the challenges, the successes, and everything in between as to kind of how you got to where you are today. I suppose just for anyone who's watching this, it'd be good to do an introduction from both sides, just so they know who we are, sort of where we work and what we do. So I'll kick us off. So I work for Interquest. They're a global search consultancy business. I'm based here in Amsterdam, and I lead our European headquarters, which focuses particularly on risk, regulation and compliance throughout financial services. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. First of all, I wanted to thank you for this invite and, of course, for your time and talking to me. Who I am. My name is Carla van Sintfiet. I'm a risk management professional. I have more than 15 years experience in asset management, in banking, and lately in the fintech world. I've worked for big players in the industry, also for smaller companies. At the moment, I'm working in a global exchange that deals with contracts, financial derivatives in crypto assets. I am married. My husband is Dutch. We've been married for a long time. We have two beautiful girls. One is 7 years old. The other one is 4. We live in the south. We have a very quiet life, normal life. Happy in general.
Oh, good. Well, I suppose just to kick us off, it'd be really interesting. And you mentioned and touched on it slightly there, but just around your journey, and if you can share a bit of sort of the early years of what made you want to pursue a career in your field, and were there any specific moments or people along that way that kind of inspired your journey?
Yes, I think if I look at my journey, it really started very, very early on. I think even in high school, to be honest. And if I remember back then, I was very drawn to sciences and math and biology and chemistry. So everything that, I had this idea in my mind, okay, I really want to go into the science subjects. And so back then when I was in high school, I had this strong idea, okay, I want to go into genetic engineering and I want to
do
outside, really completely different from what I'm doing now. And so I did that. So in high school, I concentrated on all these subjects, biology and chemistry, physics, mathematics. So I put a lot of emphasis on that. So I got really good grades because I knew that I had to achieve good grades in order to, achieve what I wanted, which is genetics and all that. So,
yeah.
And I did. So I first enrolled in an engineering program at uni, and I did that for 2 years. So in the first 2 years, I only did math, basically, like more complex math. And then after that, I started to move into a science program where I had a lot of biology and chemistry, biochemistry, thermodynamics, a lot of these things. And as I was about to, I think in my last year in university, so I was going to major in molecular genetics. And as I was about to finish, or I was in my last year, I had to take free electives, like free courses. And since I had taken everything that I could take in science, I thought, okay, I need to do something else because it's a free elective, so it can be any subject. So I decided, okay, I'll take economics. So I started taking microeconomics.
Throwaway. Just to add to everything else as well.
Exactly. So I for me, it was something new, of course. I had never done it before. So when I started the lessons and just to read more about the theory and go into classes, I realized, oh my God, I really love this. This is so interesting. And so I was there in my classes. I remember the classes started at 9 o'clock. So I was there at 8:30, just because I wanted to talk to the teacher and I wanted to,
pick his brains or her brains.
Pick her brain. And just to chat about the economy and things like that. So I thought the subject was really really interesting to me. It was something new. So so I did that. So after I did that macro, then I did micro. Then I was like, at the end of that year, I was thinking, well, what should I do? Should I, of course, go into something more economics in that direction, or should I continue in what I was doing? So, and at the time, of course, I was finishing my degree. So, and my parents knew about it. Of course, they were really excited and all that. And at the moment, when the summer started, I had already secured my spot for a master's degree and also for a summer job, also at the lab, so I had like everything.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
How did you sort of apply it at the lab as well, just out of interest? Like what sort of projects would you predominantly be involved in relating to those sort of topics?
Yeah, so because I was in so many different courses, all scientific courses, and I met a few professors that helped me. They said, well, you have good grades, maybe you can come and work with me at the lab in the summer, you get paid also, and that's great for your CV. So I thought, this is great. And also with the professor that I was going to do a master's, so I was going to do a master's in September. He offered me already, I think by May or something, he already offered me a job, with him in the lab. So I took it. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. But of course, in my mind, it was still like, the little, like voice in my head.
Yeah.
You can also do something with economics, But I thought, oh no, it's crazy, it's crazy. And at the time, one of my professors he got me an internship in Prague. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take this internship. So I went there. And all that summer, of course, I had the time to think about what to do and all that. And also the fact that I was, far away gave me more, time to think. And yeah, so I thought about it, and after discussing it with my peers and friends, and I decided, okay, I'm going to finish what I'm doing, my degree, because I only had like a semester to go before I completed all the credits, and of course I have to write my thesis and all that. And I'm going to finish that because I had already promised, okay, I'm going to achieve my degree and all that. And then after that, I will continue with something related to economics, So, yeah, so that was basically how I came about, to that decision in my life. And also when I was in Prague, I met a really nice friend. I made friends with a person who actually is now my husband. But through this,
out in more ways than one.
yeah, well, he's Dutch, of course, but we met randomly. I mean, because we were both looking for, I think it was like a bar that had this amazing beer. But anyway, like we started to talk.
Now I'm gonna have to ask what beer it was.
And because he was a stranger, I started to tell him, hey, because he asked me like, okay, so what are you doing here? So I told him, hey, so a bit about my story, where I was at the moment. And at that moment, of course, I was really like thinking what to do. So I told him everything, so this is what is happening. I don't know what to do, and we started talking, and he was so nice and so easy to talk to. And then we became friends, of course, and he advised me. So all the days, I think he was there for a week or something. So all the days that he was there, we went like on different trips. We went to see the castle in Prague, museums and things like that. And and he was, of course, from his point of view, advising me, and so we kind of bonded over that. And of course, yeah, so the summer ended, I went back to school. I finished uni, my degree and all that. Then I applied to my second degree. And all this time, of course, I continued talking to, this person who was now my husband. And yeah, so that's, and of course I had to, at that moment also, when I decided that, I had to also communicate that to my parents, because my parents didn't know that I had all these things going on in my head, and that I wanted to pursue something different. But I was very happy that I did. So I had to explain all of these, and they were supportive in the end. And
In the
I
end.
started, yeah, in the end, yeah, the beginning was a bit of a shock because they were like, "What? You're going to change directions, and now, and why?" And all these questions. But I already knew in my heart that I wanted to do something else. Yeah, so I finished that. I started another degree. So this was a degree in economics, and I major in finance. I finished that. I did that. I think I because I had taken a lot of math before, so I could do it faster because I had credits already from the past. So I think in 3 years, 3.5 years, I was done with my degree. And and so at the time that when I finished school, that was the time also in which we had like the whole financial crisis coming, the credit crunch crisis. So it was a really tricky period, to start working.
It was probably a tricky period, but for someone like you who enjoys like maths and kind of research that much, it was probably quite an interesting time for you as well.
Interesting time, yeah, of course, because it happened the whole debacle with Lehman Brothers, and the mortgage crisis in the US, and everything, like spreads were super high and all that. So it was like an interesting time. Like every time you would read the news, there was something big, in the news, you would be like, oh my God, what is going on? And at the time, of course, I started working. I was applying for jobs and all that. At that time, of course, companies that didn't want to hire students. But anyway, I started applying because I had experience, or a bit of experience in my CV, because I did work for the university. So I had built up a bit of experience. So that allowed me to go find something, like an entry-level job. And indeed I was successful. I started working for ING, an entry-level job, in the risk management department. Also a little bit, what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be in the asset management industry. So and that was perfect for me, to start, to get my feet in the water. And so I started working, and of course, that was like a great experience, because I was there in the risk management department. I was monitoring, I think, something like close to 300 funds or something. They were like UCITS funds, and UCITS funds had a lot of restrictions and things, because they need to comply with that. UCITS is some kind of passport, like to market these funds. And there's a lot of rules in terms of the diversification. So it was so I had to basically monitor these funds, and be in contact with the front office, and understand what is happening in each of the strategies of these funds. So it was very busy, of course. So I did this with another colleague, I remember, and we were so busy because at the time also there was a big project going on. And and all of this at the same time, right? And so that gave me a lot of exposure. And also, of course, you meet colleagues, you meet people, and of course you increase your knowledge. At the same time also, I started working on my CFA. So it was a really like interesting years, because of everything that was happening in the economy, but also what I was seeing, because I was like fresh out of uni, and then seeing everything that is happening, how it really works in real life, right?
It's kind of putting like educational into commercial, and actually seeing how it links, because it's one thing kind of being able to look at it theoretically, but then when you actually put it into practice, you realize just how broad a scope it has, but also the impact it has from the changes that you make.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so for me it was wow. It was it was great. So I learned a lot there. And then, of course, I did that for a few years, and then a colleague of mine then moved to a different role at Shell. And a few months after, he called me and said, like, "Hey, Carla, why don't you come and join us here?" So it went from there, like, then I moved there. I also worked there as an analyst in the risk management department. And then at the same time also I started a master's in international finance at UVA. So I was very, very busy. So at the same time that I was working full time, I was also studying. I was trying to complete my CFA. I was also doing these masters.
Do you want to add any more into that mix? How?
Honestly, I had no life back then. Like, it was only like working, studying, and if I had a bit of time, of course, on weekends, I would do something fun. But it was like so busy, But I also enjoy, those years because I was much younger and I had all the time, So I thought, I might as well just
do it now and then reap the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So so it was only like working, studying, and of course, I worked at Shell for a few years. Then at the same time, a few years after, I was finishing, because it was 2 years the masters that I was doing. Then I finished the masters, then I had to write my thesis and all that, and then at the same time, so I was really busy doing that. Then at the same time, I moved onto a different job at Aegon. Aegon Asset Management was managing the assets of Aegon Insurance. So I started there as senior portfolio risk manager, and I was responsible for all these fixed income strategies, alternative fixed income. And so these were very illiquid instruments, like in these funds, like mortgages and private loans and ABSs and RMBSs, CMBSs, CLOs. And it was super nice job, to be honest, because I had the opportunity to work closely with the front office, with the teams that were managing those funds. And of course, the mortgage fund was a very successful fund of Aegon. So I was in constant communication with them. So anything that was happening basically with the funds, I was in part of the meetings, part of the discussions around it, because we were, the risk managers for those funds. So I did that almost, I think, for close to 5 years or so. And then through my work within Aegon Asset Management, I worked in a project together with Aegon Bank. And this is how I got to know people at Aegon Bank, and of course through my work. Then when there was a vacancy at Aegon Bank, then the head of that team asked me to come and join her and move to her team. And in the end, I ended up moving to Aegon Bank, and that was my transition from asset management to banking. And at the time when I joined Aegon Bank, it was an interesting time for Aegon because it had not been announced yet, but a few months after it was announced that Aegon Bank and Knab were merging, actually, the two. Yes. So so it was a lot of a period of changes in the bank, and for the two entities, of course, because they were merging and becoming one, and location was also changing because we were at Aegon Plain, so all the people from Aegon Bank had to move to the location of Knab. Knab was in Amsterdam West. So a lot of changes there. Also, of course, at the time, there was a lot of work that had to be done because the
integrations of the systems as well behind it all, like the changeover is so chaotic for everyone that we ever speak to going through mergers. Not good.
Yes, absolutely. But also, I mean, because I think at the time when I moved, it was around 2019. So that's the year that the merge happened. But I think in 2017, there was an on-site. So there was a number of findings, of course, that the bank was working to solve. And so a project had been started, to work on all all these items that had to be, fixed, or the bank had to make these changes to prove to, of course, to the regulator that they were in control of all the risks. So I was immediately part of all these work that had to be done, and at the same time all these changes happening in the bank. But I had a lot of fun. It was very busy because there was a lot of things to do, but at the same time also the opportunity to learn, because some people of course left because of the location, and some people didn't really want to travel. So there was opportunity also in the bank. So and of course working in all these things meant, okay, you had to do a lot more than just what your job description said. So I had to branch out and do other things also within the team, which was great, actually. And so that gave me a lot of also exposure to everything that was happening, in banking. And I had when I did the project at Aegon Asset Management, I had to have some knowledge of, ICAP and ILAP and those things, because that was what the project was about, like bringing all these metrics, into the risk management system that we had built in-house. But of course, moving here, to the bank, I was directly exposed to all these things and all the discussions in the ALCO. And so it was like super, super interesting. I really enjoyed my time there. And then, of course, a few years after, then I moved to a Japanese bank. And this was a wholesale bank. So it had it was basically a bank that serviced Japanese clients that wanted to invest in Europe, or European clients that wanted to invest in Japan. So it was more niche. So it operated in a more niche environment. And of course, there I was head of risk. So I was responsible for financial risk, non-financial risk, and everything related to data protection, information security. So for me, the attractiveness of this role was to be able to, do way more than what I was doing at because at Kenap, I only focus on financial risk, and I was there responsible for liquidity and FX risk, market risk. And this was way more than that. And thanks to my experience at Aegon, both at Aegon Asset Management and at Aegon Bank, I had the opportunity to work a lot with operational risk as well. With the ORM team. So I was, very familiar with what they did. So that helped me in my next role at Mizuho Bank. And so over there, I was responsible for, everything. So everything that happened, for to prepare the ICAP, the ILAB, the STREP, so which was a huge effort. And like I said, information security and data protection. So that gave me a lot of experience. I learned a lot along the way. And actually that, with all this knowledge, then I moved on to my next role, which is the role that I'm having at the moment, which is head of enterprise risk management. And my role in my current role, I had to basically build the whole risk management framework, having learned and having come from mature companies where everything was that the whole framework was there, and having had all that experience in the past years allowed me to come in now and set up the framework, from the scratch. So so super nice journey. I mean, my journey
is an intense one as well. I think two key points for me to take out of that is the sheer amount of education that you went through, the ability to be able to change direction with a really clear thought process as to why you wanted to change it. But then going from asset management to banking to fintech to more kind of structured organizations to a trading organization as well, or an exchange. It's a lot of kind of to and froing, and then you're almost every single role you're taking on more and taking it back a little bit. So you're building a lot more rather than actually just kind of overseeing, like you said at the beginning, it's kind of more BAU and it goes more into project and actually scalability towards the end of it. And all of that to put into one, I must say, you're very brave or crazy. I'm not sure.
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect combination. But clearly, you've managed to balance a personal life with a professional and fairly a very demanding and dynamic career. That is a struggle for some people as they go for it, particularly with, I think you said earlier, 7-year-old and 4-year-old. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So, do you have any advice for people who are kind of trying to juggle both at the moment? Because you've still been able to progress your career and have a really nice, calm personal life and in a really nice place on the edge of Amsterdam.
Yeah, no, that is really a challenge,
Yeah.
to remain sane and, with all the things, going on at
Yeah.
work, at home, with your kids and, just daily life and dinner and all that. Of course, I'm a professional, I work every day but I'm also a mom, I'm also in charge of the house and everything that happens and with the kids. And I think time management is really important. So
Mm.
for me, every minute that I'm spending it, I try, to basically the first things that I do, all the important things, that I need to do. So I always think in terms of the week, what is happening so I have my calendar up to date. So everything that happens in the week, I put it there, if I need to prepare something or whatever. So I keep on checking that. And I always focus on the important things, what are the must things that I have to do, it's like having, I think I read this once, like, that in life you have like, you need to juggle all these balls in the air, right? And some balls, the secret is to know, like, some balls are made out of glass. So if you drop them, they break. So there's a big impact from that. But other balls are just plastic balls. So if you drop them, it's not a big deal because you can just
Mm.
pick it up, and continue. So for me, it's like I will first take care of these glass balls, to make sure that, okay, everything is, in order and running and all that. And the things that are less important, I think, okay, I can skip this or I can postpone
Yeah.
it, or I can always work around that. And I always try to have a backup for things, if this doesn't work out, then this is something else, so, but also, I mean, help around the house also, of course. So, like nannies and those kind of things, in the past, I used to have au pairs, and that helped me a lot, especially when I was like super busy. My girls were younger and need more attention.
Yeah.
Right now, we're doing fine, I think, with just like having a nanny and all that. And but also my husband is also like very hands-on, as a parent and as a husband,
Good.
he cooks a lot also, so he does quite a lot also in the house. So I think it's a balance of the two, realizing you are a team and you need to help each other to make things happen, and when we have like difficult weeks, sometimes, like, he also has a lot of meetings, a lot of things going on, or sometimes business trips and things like that. And the same for me. So we just cover like each other, like, okay, so I cannot do it this week, but can you cover for me? Yeah. So we always like, work as a team, to make it happen. And like I
Mhm.
said, like, we just focus on the glass balls, some of the plastic balls. Okay, well, okay,
Yeah.
if
We'll
we
let
drop
them ones go.
okay.
Pick them up at a later date.
Yes, absolutely.
Important is just seeing, and you're a prime example of that, you can actually do both in conjunction with one another without letting all the glass balls drop. But I think people just, it comes down to a sense of people panic about dropping a plastic ball sometimes. And so then it's kind of just changing your own mindset in terms of what that actually means for the bigger picture. And I think
Exactly.
that's where it starts changing as people go through that process as to how that actually needs to be done. Because so many people, and I don't think it's talked about enough, struggle with this particular kind of space in their life and managing both. But it
Yeah.
is almost acting as, like you say, a team. You have a team internally. When there's a problem, you fix it together. And that's how it should be on your kind of external life if you have that sort of support around you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. I think in the past when I used to be the same, like I wanted to have all the balls in the air, and sometimes that would, that would kill me also because, sometimes my husband would say, yeah, but like sometimes you want to achieve like all the things maybe that were, planned for this week or something, but nobody does this,
No, because if you manage that,
like absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So he said, like, don't worry about it, honey. Just, just chill, don't worry. And I started to see also like, like highly effective people also, like they don't, they focus on the important things, and some things that you think, okay, this is not so important, or if I don't do this, there's no a huge, not a
yeah.
huge impact, if I postpone this or, and that also allows you to manage things better and stay calm. And
Mhm.
what is important also is like to plan ahead, and be realistic also with your time, like some things you need to dedicate more time.
Yeah.
Others, you say, okay, I can outsource these, I can whatever, so yeah, so I try to, to stay in control of the things that really matter to me, and some of the things that I think, okay, these are not so important, then I outsource them, or I postpone them, or I work around it. So yeah, so like I said, and also, well, if I cannot make something or whatever, it's not so important, yeah, I also don't stress myself too much about it. In the
Yeah.
past, I wanted to do really everything, and and put all the check marks in my to-do list, but sometimes it's not possible. You just need to, yeah.
I think it's around just saying like that's okay. Everything might not be possible, but we can all move on. As I say, I think that's a really, really good thing to kind of highlight. And I suppose kind of taking the conversation back to enterprise risk a little bit and how your career has developed after seeing how you've managed both. Obviously, enterprise risk has become more important and evolved sort of over the years. So, how do you see, or kind of how do you view, or how do you feel the role of risk management will change in the future via technology enhancements, or just more of a focus on operational effectiveness, even with Dora coming in from the operational efficiency side, how that would sort of then impact enterprise and sort of change the landscape as it moves forwards?
Yeah, I think the role of risk management has changed quite a lot
Mm.
in the last 10 years, 15 years. I think um, especially now in the last couple of years, I think the technological advances, so machine learning, AI,
Yes, they're
is
huge.
a lot. Yes, the industry and new technology, is, it's changing risk management, and also regulation as well. So regulation is always constantly changing. With this new technology, is, is they're playing catch up a bit, because now, of course, they need to come up with regulation to regulate all these, like blockchain, all these, digital assets, and all that. So and this is something new, of course, so nobody's really has a lot of experience with this.
Mm.
I think also security, for example, is also another aspect of very important to risk management as well, because right now, with all these digital technology, we're more exposed to uh, criminal activity, and this is all, of course, from these scams and all these, phishing
Mm.
attempts, and things like that, which is something that people are exposed to daily. And also, we have other uh, the constant, risks and challenges of, geopolitics, and the economic environment, climate change. So there's several things that are changing the way we do risk management nowadays. I think we're at a very interesting time in history, because all of these, now Bitcoin and digital assets in general, are becoming more mainstream. since we have, of course, like
Just touching on that as well, with crypto and digital assets, when did we ever think we'd be able to sit there and call it mainstream? If we look at it kind of 10 years ago, I don't think that was ever going to be in the context of ever being mainstream.
Absolutely, yeah. Nobody thought of that. I mean, when this whole thing started, of course, this was, long time ago, I think 2008 or so. It was something new, so only like a few people knew about it, and perhaps, so the people that started with these digital assets, or like investing in it, I think they perhaps didn't, they thought, okay, they really believed in it, of course, but nobody, I think, at that point thought that this would become like a mainstream thing, that now, of course, you have like investment vehicles, ETFs, that invest in the digital assets. And I think there's no way to stop it. I mean, it's just going to grow, right?
Yes. There was the winter where you saw what we would say the cowboys get kind of pushed out of the market, which saw the more stable ones with really good infrastructure, and even comes down to cybersecurity and the sort of setup stay. So I think they've had that sort of shake off now, where it's just the main players left.
Yeah, exactly. And now more and more you're seeing like traditional finance sort of blending with, like the crypto world, right? Like DeFi. So yeah, it's a very interesting time. And of course, I mean, the way we are doing risk management, of course, that has an impact on us, on the whole industry. So like I said, like, people are not so familiar with, cybercrime. They're not too familiar with wallet management. It's something new to the retail investor. The institutional investor, I think they're, of course, they're big players, so they have the means to, to manage that better. But especially for the retail investor, this is something completely new. So, and this is the reason why I think we have now so many like ETFs, because of course there's this interest in investing in this particular asset class, but people are just not, too familiar with how to do it. They just don't know how to do it. And especially all the wallet management part, it's still very, we're still like operating like, like we're pirates, like trying to, write all these like long, seed phrases and how to store it and all that, so people is still are, it's very new to them. So and this of course leads to situations where, you might lose this passphrase, like where to store it, and you have, hot wallets, cold wallets. And so this is really changing, of course. So how people do finance, how people invest. So absolutely, it is really disruptive, the technology. But I think like the fundamentals of risk management are still there, like basically the way we set up our framework, how we want to, for example, if we are, in our jobs, we need to understand what the processes are, where the risks are, where we put our controls, right? We need to also understand, okay, how to assess that risk. So are we looking at different factors, different things that might have an impact on that process, on that risk? Is the control effective, yes or no? So those are questions that are still there, still remains. And also we need to keep monitoring things, because things change very rapidly too. So it's different, from the traditional finance world, where things were slower perhaps, but now we need to basically stay, like always, know what is happening, in the news.
I think that's where people sort of really undervalue kind of operational enterprise risk, is people don't realize it's looking at the risk of the entire enterprise. And if you kind of reread that back, that's the IT controls, it's a finance area, it's the legal setup, it's the compliance processes. And if we look at it from different risk facets, you have liquidity risk, and that's kind of directed into one particular risk, but still ties into enterprise risks as a whole. So it's taken on board the sort of whole end-to-end processes from each and every different team across the enterprise, which I think is where people kind of miss the gap between the depth of the role, I think you could say.
Yeah, so I mean, enterprise risk management is actually some kind of overarching framework,
Yeah.
Both financial and non-financial risks, because you have so many risks in a company. It's impossible to be able to manage everything if you don't have the cooperation also of the people, in the first line. And also you need tooling for that as well, because there's so many things to look at. But what is important is to, have basically a framework of how you look at things, like how you assess your risks, how you assess your, how you also test your controls. And that is, of course, going to be different depending on the type of risk and the type of control that you have. So, so it's very important to understand that, for people, of course, in senior management, to have that understanding, to have that also support, for the function. Because and nowadays, regulators, will want, especially now because it's something new, right? They want to companies to understand their risks. And the only one to understand it is to know the processes that you have in your company and where those risks are and where those controls are. Only then you can know, you can assess things better, and you can also have an idea of, okay, what is the risk that you're running, and and what things you can do to mitigate that risk.
I think it's also one of the hardest parts as well, is ensuring that individuals at all levels of an organization are aligned with risk management objectives and also the practices. And if you're talking to someone in commercial, we just don't think about it at all. The risk is only there when it's there, rather than kind of preempting it and staying away from it. So I suppose, how would you kind of get that embedded, particularly from where you start something from the beginning, or whether you're integrating it from a merger or working out the BAU side? How or where would the struggles be to ensure that all individuals across all of the levels in the organization are actually on board with the risk management?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and it's a tricky one as well, because if you come from a mature industry and on big companies and all that, people more or less, because they have the experience, they know, the function of risk management, what we do, and so they tend to cooperate quite a lot. In new companies like startups or companies that are scaling up, where risk management is not something that people are familiar with, there's like a period, of course, where they're trying to understand what is it that you guys do, what is risk management, and so sometimes, of course, the fact that we're there, it means for them, perhaps they need to do something, they need to document things, they need to maybe manage their own risks, they need to also put controls, they need to do things, and of course nobody likes to do these kind of things, because for them it's like, okay, if this is work that we need to do, nobody likes that. But I think what is important is to especially at the beginning, do things. For example, in my experience, I have tried to close that gap a bit by accommodating certain things. So, for example, processes are not described, documentation is not there. So all these things are things that at the beginning, I think, and especially in smaller companies, we need to just do a bit more than just what is described in our role. So, so risk management also needs to sort of help a bit the business, in achieving that. So I'm not saying, of course, that their responsibility has to be with risk management. Of course not. I mean, it is always, of course, with the first line. But I think risk management as second line needs to facilitate that. So and to be able to close that gap, right, from the business, and also to create that risk awareness in the business, and to foster basically a culture of cooperation. So I think that's really important at the beginning, and it means of course more work for people in risk, but I also think that that's beneficial because that allows you to um, get to know the business a bit better, like
Yeah.
get deeper into what the departments do, how they do it, all the steps, in your processes. And that teaches you something, you learn something from it, so you better assess also your risks, you understand them better. Also, people that are there, if things are not documented, they also don't know the whole process, from A to Z, right? So for them, it's also like a learning
Of
curve
course.
as well. So yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a matter of balancing the two, having that facilitating things, trying to reach out to people and having constant communication with them, right? People in the first line, and and of course also very important the support of senior management in this, very very
Yes.
important, because it's
Yeah,
always
no.
top, it's always like that.
Well,
So
it's got to be driven from the top, otherwise people just don't get on board. And I think having it driven from the top, they need to have the knowledge and understanding of what it actually means. And that can be quite difficult when you've got tech, product, commercial, and everyone in the same room all talk in different languages. So
absolutely, yeah, that's difficult sometimes for people to grasp that, everybody that has, from a different department, they will have their own ideas and what works for them and whatnot. But in the end, I mean, we just need to think, okay, we're one company, we all need to help each other, and we just need to get things done, right?
yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose having heard about all your career kind of today and all the different areas that you've done, both from an academic and also from a kind of internal perspective commercially, reflecting over your career, what achievements would you say you were most proud of, and what lessons have you learned along the way through any challenges that have arisen or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think in my in my younger years, I think, well, I was very proud, of course, of the fact that, working and studying at the same time,
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive achievement in itself, let's just say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at moments I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to drop dead or something, but I made it.
Yeah, evidently.
Yeah,
Smiling as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah, so I think like, also, I mean, there's been so many projects and things that I feel proud, in my previous roles. I think in general is I'm proud of the fact that I have a busy life, busy career, but also like very busy at home and with my kids and all that, and having enjoying both. It's what I'm most proud about. I think is having that combination, and if I think, okay, I've done like many projects and many things, and that's great and all that, but of course it's having right now what I'm most proud of is having this you know busy life, but at the same time also a very happy life, and keeping that
I think
balance.
that's so important. And just to be able to say it is actually really, really nice as well. And people don't really highlight that enough, I think, around the balance and having the happiness in both areas really kind of affects the whole side.
Oh, absolutely, that's actually that makes it worth it, right? I mean,
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, for me it's like having that happiness both, at home, at work, and yeah.
Oh,
And
good. And then I suppose that sort of ties into the challenges part as well of your successes and kind of what you're most proud of. Correct me if I'm wrong, probably were some of the biggest challenges as well along the way.
yes, yes, absolutely. Also, I mean that makes you look at things in a different way, right?
Mm.
What is important to you, and all of that. But yeah, I think I always try to, put things in, look at things, from a distance, because of course, everything in life is just a moment, right? So you're here, you're doing something, you're achieving something, you finish it, then you move on, then you go to something else. it's always like that. It always seems like, there's no time for anything. Sometimes I'm thinking like I'm constantly rushing, going from here to there, and even my kids sometimes say, Mommy, you're always so busy. I say, yes, there's no time, like sometimes I think like, oh my God, I wish I could just like pause for a moment,
just have a breather. Yeah.
Breather and just say like, oh my God, I'm just enjoying, like just sitting here, thinking and, so I rarely have moments like that, but when I do, my God, I enjoy that so much.
Yeah. No, I think we learn to take them as gospel almost, whereas some people kind of take them as the niceties to have. It's actually being able to take a minute and just say, okay, breathe, look what everything's going on. It's fine. I can take just a minute to push it forwards. And I think that ties in quite nicely and sort of looking to wind this down. If you was to offer any advice to young professionals kind of aspiring to move forward into leadership roles and into the fintech space and into enterprise risk, what advice would you give them based on what you've learned throughout your career?
Yeah, I would say my best advice would be like, don't be afraid to, step into new things. Don't be afraid to questions. Don't be afraid to, jump into something that you've never done before, or, like, I think I am where I am because I was never afraid to, try on new things, so, and also in the some of the companies that I was in, sometimes, changes happen, and that meant, okay, I had to do way more than just what my job entailed, like maybe I was only supposed to do this, but I branch out, so if my boss would say, okay, there's this, who wants to do it, okay, I'll do it, so I was not afraid to try
put your hand up almost and just say, I'll take it on. Yeah,
exactly. So I was very bold in that sense, so I was not afraid to try new things. And I always thought, okay, if I don't know something, I can at least, I think I'm smart enough to figure things out, to read about it, to talk to people, I'll make it happen. I always thought that about myself, like, okay, even if, if I don't have the complete picture or all the information that I need, I will just, learn about it. I will make it happen. And, so I was not afraid to do that. So I think that would be my advice to people that want to get into risk management or into fintech, or, to never stop learning, never stop asking questions. Just, just don't be afraid, that, because that's the worst thing. I think if you're afraid and you don't do things and then you regret not doing those things. So just might as well just do it, see what happens.
And I always just think no question is a stupid question. At least you're finding out something new. So I always emphasize ask as many questions as is needed till you're blue in the face. And that even comes for senior people such like yourself. You probably still learn or find out new ways of doing things. There's not really a level that you get to where questions are unnecessary or unwanted, that it doesn't help drive performance. And I think that's a really key aspect to kind of embed from the very beginning, of always ask questions continuously and always kind of keep continuous learning kind of upward scale as you look to go through your career, because you can never know everything, and if you do, you're a genius.
Yeah, it's true, huh? Like you never stop learning, and even like, in the C-suite, I mean, they're still learning also, you don't have all the information. So I mean, never a stupid question, you just need to ask, and there's nothing wrong with a question, right? So, and never nothing wrong with trying something new, right? I mean, you always end up learning something. So that would be my advice.
Well, look, it was honestly great to have you on this, and particularly from all of the educational developments that you've done, all the career assets that you've gone through, from a fund perspective to banking to more of a fintech, and kind of what you've been able to achieve in your career, but also from a personal perspective, what you've been able to achieve, I think is actually really, really admiring and really key to highlight. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. And yes.